what are we going to do with it? Here, just watch an interview that he did recently. Let's play this.
Basically, defense spending, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, that's about 90% of it right there. So, you can't cut from the rest of the budget to balance things.
This has been the whole challenge, right? Because we're blocking off roughly 90% of federal spending and saying we can't touch that. Can't touch it. So we're arguing over roughly 13% of federal spending, in terms of trying to find savings. And it's just not realistic. So the issue long term that we all have to grapple with, Republicans and Democrats, and we have to get serious about, is how to tackle our national debt. Most of our debt is accrued by mandatory spending. There are savings to be had in the Defense Department. No question about it. There are savings to be had across every agency and department in the federal government.
I wanted to show you those clips back to back, because when you hear Dion Voles, 102, talk about what Medicaid meant to her, and then you see MAGA Republican Mike Lawler representing the district, I think it just brings the point home. Let's bring in Beth Davidson. She's a Rockland County legislature running for the congressional seat there against Mike Lawler, still in the primary stage, so running in the Democratic primaries there in New York 17th. Beth, I want to ask you, from your perspective as a Rockland County legislator in that district, of course, when you see those videos and you see what Mike Lawler says, what's your response to that?
Well, we here in the 17th district know that Mike Lawler was a devotee of the late Michael Jackson, but it was another prophet of my generation, Generation X, MC Hammer, who said, you can't touch this. And that is what Mike Lawler seems to be implying, except I really thank Joe Scarborough for teeing that up for him to say, Mike Lawler to say, it's not realistic not to cut, not just Medicaid, which we already, had concerns about for 230,000 people in the 17th congressional district. But he implies that Medicare and Social Security are also on the chopping block. And I'll tell you that I have constituents in Rockland County. I represent the 10th legislative district, who are already reaching out to me very concerned that our Social Security office in White Plains, the appeals office, is going to be shuttered as of May 29th. And for those watching at home, Mike Lawler tried to blame that closure on the Biden administration, but whoops, the DOJ memo of the week outlining all of their savings put that Social Security office on their docket. So we know who's to blame for this. We know who funded Mike Lawler's campaign hugely, $1.7 million. And that was one Elon Musk, who, you stole my line about the wrecking ball. That is what it feels like. And we're going to start feeling the impacts of that wrecking ball right here in CD 17.
I think about just these human stories, and I try to take the games out of politics in my reporting. I think corporate news for too long made this like a horse race when this is about people's lives. So I think about Katie Sanchez, a 37-year-old disability rights advocate and Medicaid recipient in Pearly River, who spoke with me. Let me just share her story. And then I want to hear just generally about your communications with constituents there. But let's play this one.
My name is Katie Sanchez, and I am 37 years old, and I live in Pearl River, New York. The Medicaid cuts would affect us, people like me, deeply with our programs. They have the housing, like the community house, residential, supportive employment. I get all of those, and I get Medicaid, I get Medicare. We cannot have those cuts. We really cannot, or else. What are we gonna do? My message, please do not cut Medicaid. Please, we need it. We need it. Please do not cut. Please save it and do not cut it.
Like, this is who Lawler is picking on, and Trump and Musk. That this is who they're targeting while they hang out in Mar-a-Lago and party with the last party they had was the pink Birkin bag Mar-a-Lago party, bragging about $400,000 handbags that they were displaying, or Trump talks about his meme coins that he's whatever. This is who
It's all
they're
about the
attacking,
thrift.
Beth? This is who they're attacking, Beth?
Katie Sanchez is a friend. She is such an inspiration to me. She is a long distance runner. She's also running for president of her supportive house through ARC. So really proud of her. And look, she's speaking truth to power. I was at an event with the disability rights community a few weeks ago called Rally in the Valley. And when Mike Lawler got up to speak and talked about how he was going to protect Medicaid, he got booed. So, he can say over and over again that he's not touching Medicaid, but we know what he's doing. He's now voted twice to put those entitlement programs on the chopping block, people have worked their whole lives for, including Social Security and including Medicaid, which, not everyone understands that Medicaid helps, people with disabilities, of course, seniors, children, half of all babies and moms in this country. And to think that anyone would put those programs up for grabs is just really despicable. And again, I'm hearing from my constituents. They're really concerned, and that's why you're seeing these huge rallies of 300, 400, 500, 1,000 people pushing back against these cuts, and specifically against Mike Lawler, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump.
Beth, are you seeing a shift in the district because the people still elected this guy in 2024?
Actually, CD17 narrowly went for Kamala Harris. It's one of only 3 districts in the entire country that voted for Kamala Harris, but did not elect a congressional Democrat. That's why
Kamala, but Lawler.
Yes.
And so, so they still picked Lawler, though. Mm-hmm. So are you seeing, though, a shift there where they're starting to realize, though, that Lawler is an agent of Trump, that this is not someone who's pretending to be something else? Do you think that's getting through right now?
I think that we're seeing exactly who Mike Lawler is through his voting record, through his false promises, along with cutting Medicaid. That continuing resolution also clawed back $33 million in community project funding that he claimed he had secured conveniently right before the 2024 election. So, these are funds for law enforcement here in Rockland County, where I live, for clean water in Putnam County, for sidewalk improvements in the town of Ramapo to protect pedestrians and improve pedestrian safety. So people are finding out again in their real lives, day-to-day lives, what these cuts have meant and what Mike Lawler's promises mean, which is, as it turns out, nothing. And what does he have to say about these cuts to Medicaid? What does he have to say about cuts to SNAP benefits? There was a huge report in our local paper this morning about how food insecurity and feeding programs are getting totally hit, as are the farms that supply them, by these massive cuts to the Department of Agriculture and the worrisome coming cuts to SNAP programs. Our People to People Food Pantry Director, Diane Sarator, said, "People thank us for doing God's work." And I say, we don't do God's work. We do what the government is supposed to be doing. And so I join her in calling on Mike Lawler to do his job and make sure that even more people here in District 17 and Rockland County, where I live, don't go hungry. It's wrong. As you're talking about, they're having $400,000 Birkin bag parties and people are going hungry in this district. It's disgusting. And I think people are going to see it, and you're going to see a huge turnout next November.
And Beth, people in Rockland County, of course, know who you are, but to the broader Midas Touch network here who may be seeing you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself. And obviously, this is, it's still in the primary stage for this congressional seat. So as you kind of tell us about yourself and what you're fighting for, how are you going to differentiate yourself in this primary?
Sure. Well, I've lived in Rockland County for 20 years. I've spent about almost half of that in public service. I served 2 terms on my school board here in Nyack, and then was elected to the Rockland County Legislature. I won a purple seat with 57% of the vote. Just got out, knocked 4,000 doors, ran with a slate of candidates actually with the express intention of winning a Democratic supermajority on the Rockland County Legislature. And 3 of us won, and we did win the first ever Democratic supermajority in Rockland County history on our county legislature. And so what that means is I'm probably one of the only Democrats in the country right now that can say I've cut taxes and passed my own common sense gun safety legislation and preserved hundreds of acres of open space and not cut, but boosted funding for our nonprofits by 20%. So that's a record I'm really proud to run on. I'm currently the only